Hello, welcome to Uncle Cthulhu Reviews. So today's video is the first in my series of rules reviews. So I've got tons of wargames rules I've had experience with over the years, so I thought I would do some reviews on each one of them. And the system I'm going to use, because I don't believe in reinventing the wheel, is going to be based on the Little Wars TV system. If you've not checked out any of the Little Wars TV videos, I suggest you do. What they'll do is pick a battle topic, they'll do a bit of a video before it, they'll play the game of the battle, and then they'll do a couple of supplementary videos talking maybe about the terrain they've made for it or any other things that's came up in the battle worth talking about. And they'll also do a review of the rules they've used, and they'll score it on 5 different areas. They're weighted, so first one is presentation of the rules, that's worth 10%. Then it's playability, which is worth 30%, mechanics, which is worth 30%, historical flavour, which is worth 20%, and finally support, which is worth 10%. So I thought, actually really nice system, really like the system. So I give them an email and it says, do you mind if I use your rules review system? And they're like, yeah, go ahead. So here we are, first one, Black Powder. So this is a second edition book you see before you. And actually, I don't think there's much difference between the second edition and the first edition in terms of presentation. And actually, in terms of gameplay and that, it's the second edition's a tidier version of the first edition, the best way to think about it. So you can see it's really nice hardback book. It's 200 pages, just under 200 pages. Full colour throughout. All pages coloured like parchment. Lovely pictures of 28mm models. Every page has at least one photo artwork as well from the boxes. It is just a gorgeous book. It's front half of the book is the rules. The second half of the book is scenarios and talking about battles as well. I am not sure you will get a nicer looking wargaming book or a well produced one. Put that back up. And there's also supplements, and actually the first edition was as nice as well, and there's wee snippets and talking about things and quotes throughout as well. And the supplements, they're of an equal quality as well, exactly the same style, parchment, pictures of models, artwork. Even for the periods I don't game, I've bought all the supplements for, because it's just lovely to look at and see. So yeah, my first review, my first score as part of a review is going to be 9 out of 10 for presentation. They're part history, part organisational guide, part scenarios, scenario books. Yeah, lovely stuff. So I've got my cue cards to make sure I don't miss anything. Yeah, so supplements in case you're interested. There's 3 Napoleonic ones. Albion 1, which is basically Peninsula. Albion 2, which is the 100 Days Waterloo campaign. Clash of Eagles, which is 1812. American Civil War, French Indian War, American War of Independence. The Last Argument of Kings, which is kind of 7-Year War, Jacobites, Zulu War, and Sudan. Now, I'm going to be doing some reviews and delving into some of those supplements in another video as well. Takes us to playability. It's really interesting. Black Powder is designed for big armies on big tables. 6 foot by 8 foot tables, big armies, being able to play big games in an evening. So the system's actually really playable and really simple. The issue of playability is the size of the tables, the size of the armies that you'd need. There are ways you can change that up. You've probably seen some of my other videos talking about Black Powder. So for example, you could say play in 10mm or 6mm, which is what I've done, and just change all the inches to centimetres. So if you're trying to play games of Black Powder on a standard sized British table, so in a house, a standard sized dinner table is 5 foot by 3 foot. I've got 3 2x4 sections I can put them to make a 6x4. But even then on a 6x4, battlefields lack the depth for manoeuvre, and it just becomes 2 armies smushing into each other. So like I say, 6mm or 10mm, you can play it on a 6x4 table, reduce everything to centimetres, it looks and feels great. The other thing that we've done for 28mm games is knock a third off all the movements. So instead of a 12-inch movement for infantry, and infantry can maybe move 3 times in a turn for 36 inches, which on a 6x4 board's dramatic. So instead of being a 12-inch move, you reduce it to 9-inch move. And that seems to work all right. You also need, like I say, large armies as well to start to get a feel for the battles. To give you an idea, my Napoleonic armies weigh in at about 12 battalions apiece. Each battalion is 24 men. I'll generally have a heavy or a light brigade of cavalry, and there'll be about 3 battalions. I use 9 men a battalion. Rules suggest 12, and artillery and officers as well. So that's quite an undertaking. That you're looking at over 300 models painted, which is I love painting models, but that's a lot of models. Like I said before, the rules are a simple set of rules, pretty intuitive. Once you're actually into a game, I found when I brought new players to the game, after the first turn, once they've seen a bit of shooting and stuff as well, they just take to it. Give them a nice, clear kind of list of units. Starts dead simple. Now the rules are really popular, really common. Warlord's a pretty good company and quite large, and got, to use business terms, market penetration. So you should be able to rock up to a club and get a game. But that becomes a second issue with the way it's been designed, is there isn't actually a way in the rules of, say, a couple of battle scenarios, and army lists are really inconsistent. So the onus then becomes on the player to set up and organise games. Now normally you'd be playing with your pals or a game and club, so you can set that up and arrange that in advance. But actually, supposing you were a business person, you're away from home for a month, if I was doing, say, Warhammer, I could take my army and I could turn up to a local gaming club or a place where I play and get a game on the off chance, and there's a scenario, an army list and stuff, so I'm able to do that. That doesn't exist with Black Powder, which for me, really interesting in that, bolt action is all about the army lists and being able to do pick-up games and the scenarios and stuff. It's an interesting difference there. And with that as well, I've seen people who have gone from bolt action or Warhammer into Black Powder and be really confused by that on forums and stuff. And I certainly have had some conversations explaining stuff and talking people through stuff. So, because on one hand it's really simple to play on the tabletop and really easy to understand, on the other hand the entrance to it's really, in my opinion, really tricky, as suggested in the rule book. That's the scoring becomes really difficult. Actually, first edition had a table in the back about if you wanted to change things for different scales and stuff in the appendices. This doesn't have it. So in terms of how it plays on the table and getting new people playing games, I'd say it's 8 out of 10. In terms of what you need to get that on the table, and to, table space, etc., it's a 4 out of 10. So I'll split the difference and give it a 6 out of 10. So mechanics. At its heart, the command and control system is an upgunned version of War Master, and I love the War Master command and control system. Sorry, we've got a new cat, so I'm itching my nose quite a bit because I'm slightly allergic to cats, but it's not going to go away, so I'm just going to have to live with it. So the command and control system is your brigadier will give an order to his battalions. For example, advance the hill, drive off the enemy skirmishers, form a firing line and hold the hill against a counter-attack. That might take 2 moves. You'll take a command test. Depending on how well you do with a command test, you might end up with 1, 2 or 3 moves. So you might be able to complete your order, you might not. And I really like that. I think it's a really nice, simple system of mechanic of representing the fortunes of war, the fog of war, friction in war, and the improvements to the War Master command and control in Black Powder. Really like. Also like phrasing orders. It makes you feel like a proper officer giving orders to your troops. Shooting, basically you roll your dice. It's most basic. 4 plus is a hit. You take a save based on the quality of the target. Casualties build up. You don't remove any models or bases. You'll have a stamina marker and you'll test morale against stamina. And at other times, basically if you fail your morale, stamina tests, your whole unit's taken off. So your unit's basically at full capability until it's not. I mean, there's other things that affect that, like disorder and stuff as well, but your unit's there until it's not. Hand-to-hand combat's very similar to shooting, just with more dice. Shooting unit will generally get 3 dice, hand-to-hand will generally get 6. In hand-to-hand combat, though, it's not just the loser takes a command check based on modifiers by how much they've lost. You lose by taking more casualties than the enemy. But you also get, in hand-to-hand combat, supports become really important. So if those 2 units were fighting 6 dice, boom, boom, boom. But then if I had 1 unit, I've got +3, the enemy might not have any supports. So actually, what I've found is hand-to-hand combat becomes significantly more effective than shooting. And it becomes a lot easier for the advantage then in the game becomes, in my opinion, from what I've experienced, is the advantages with the attacker, because they can pick the combat that goes in and the supports because they're the moving player during their turn, rather than the defender who just has to hope that it's set up properly. So if you get into the mechanics of it, I believe the advantage is always going to be with the attacker. Cavalry in the game, I've only really used in Napoleonic Warfare, and it didn't seem that threatening considering it was it felt quite easy for infantry to form squares. We've played around with some house rules for that as well, where it's still quite where it's not difficult for infantry to form squares. So, for example, the current rules is, I think it's on a 1-1 or a 6-6, the infantry fail to form squares. Anything else they do, and cavalry can't charge form squares. So we've added a thing in about disorder and stuff as well. And artillery in defence seems pretty strong, but whenever I've been the attacker, I've always been underwhelmed by my artillery. But overall, the mechanics flow. They're easy to remember once you get stuck in. Nothing really is there to trip you up. Pretty much looks and plays how it is. Like I said before, the game ethos is one where you're not worried about millimeters making it for charges or not. If you use a phrase for gentlemen playing gentlemen's games, is the ethos behind it. There's nothing really groundbreaking in the rules, and it's I go, you go. I'm going to give the mechanics 6 out of 10, mainly because I could talk about this in historical flavour is I much prefer a bit more shooting in the game than just hand-to-hand combat. And I understand hand-to-hand combat isn't lunging at bayonets, it could be very close firefights. But for me, now I know the mechanics, it's the hand-to-hand combat kind of happens a bit too much. It's too effective. So 6 out of 10. Historical flavour. So like saying there, my battles for the period, I want to feel like there's some sort of manoeuvring, battle lines manoeuvring, generals getting his forces sorting out a tussle, often lines firing at each other, and then a general taking advantage and finishing the battle as the opportunity arises. So especially when I'm looking at American Wars of Independence, 7-Year War, etc., forming that line, firing at least 2 or 3 volleys, and then going in with the bayonets. I don't get that with black powder. In my experience, black powder games become about getting stuck in with a well-supported hand-to-hand combat attack, which is generally going in on turn 2 with resolutions happening quickly. Certainly, I recently did the Battle of Newmarket, and it was all hand-to-hand combat, boom, done. If you read accounts in American War battles where they form the lines and the shooting, there's very little actual charging. So it's historical flavour for me. In what I want to get out of it in historical flavour, from my understanding of the periods, it doesn't quite give me what I want. And like I say, it's those attack columns going in well supported is what defines the game, which actually might work really well for the colonial games, which I've not looked at just yet. So I'm going to give a 4 out of 10 for historical flavour. Support. So what have you got in terms of support? So Warlord, like I said, is quite a big company. They've got 9 supplements for the game. Regular articles are published by Warlord online. You see a ton of stuff in the magazines for it as well. Being popular, it's got lots of Facebook presence and lots of players as well, generating stuff for it. So, for example, even though there isn't an army list in Rebellion for the American War of Independence, I'm pretty sure I could hunt down and find army lists / points values done by the player base. So yeah, so I'll give support 8 out of 10. So to recap the scores, that's 9 out of 10 for presentation, 6 out of 10 for playability, 6 out of 10 for mechanics, 4 out of 10 for historical flavour, 8 out of 10 for support. Giving it, my first score is 61 out of 100. So what my final recap on Black Powder is: it succeeds in its stated aims of a fast-flowing game in a friendly style with large armies on large tables. I think if you were wanting it to use for regular wargaming, for the common man, if you will, then you'd really you would have to do some chopping and changing, and you'd have to do some work. Not difficult work, and actually a lot of that work's been done for you out there before by the community. But actually, the game is written. If that was your jump into wargaming, might give you a bit of a skewed thing. Certainly, you know, we used the Black Powder rules at the Great Game. If you don't know, there's some videos I've done earlier on the Great Game. It was a charity event, Battle of Waterloo. We had 100 players commanding the Allied armies and the French armies and the Prussians combined. Every battalion, every unit was represented on the field, and we were using Black Powder, and yeah, it worked a treat. It was exactly what we needed, and yeah, I enjoy playing games of Black Powder. I've got friends that play them. It's a nice, simple set of rules for setting up and playing a game and getting it done quickly. Like I say, we're a bit long tooth, so we've been able to house rule a lot of stuff, but that's not been an issue for us to get the games we wanted. So yeah, and certainly, you know, in terms of how it looks with all the supplements and stuff, it takes one of the pride of places in my bookshelf. I'll get the books down just like an Offspray book, really, and have a flick through whenever I'm interested in doing a period or finding out a bit more about stuff. So there you go. That's Black Powder. That's my first rules review. Let me know what you think about Black Powder. I look forward to hearing from you. So, you have a great day. May all the dice roll the numbers you want, and I look forward to seeing you in another video. Goodbye.